Okay, today's class is going to be on Kiddushin, the first daf of Kiddushin, and this is the third Tosefos. So it says in the Mishnah like this: Aisha niknas b'shlos drachim. A woman is acquired in three different ways. V'kones atzma b'strei drachim, and she acquires herself in two ways. Niknas, how does a woman get acquired? Through kesef u'b'shtar v'biyah. Either we give her silver or money, b'shtar with a document, or b'biyah, or marital relationships. Those are the three ways that a woman is acquired. And when it comes to kesef, the amount, according to Beis Shammai, has to be a dinner or a shaveh dinner, which is much more than Beis Hillel, who says Omrim B'Prutah b'shaveh pruta. He holds the minimal amount, a pruta or a shaveh pruta. Now Tosafoes is going to discuss why do we have to teach pruta and shaveh pruta. A pruta would be the coin itself, actual kesef, and a shaveh pruta would be something worth kesef. In other words, if a man gave a woman a car and says you're married with this car, does that work or not? That's called shaveh kesef, equal to kesef, equal to money. So Tosafoes says that kasha. He first starts out and says, listen, why don't we just teach shaveh pruta and I'll know pruta? If I know that a man can marry a woman with a car, so surely I know that a man can marry a woman with actual cash. Now what's the proof? The proof is, there's a Gemara in Baba Metzia, Daf 55a, that has a listing of chamesh prutim hem. Those are the five different types of prutas, and when it goes on to list them, it lists the shaveh pruta. So you see that even though a pruta is required, a shaveh pruta could be used in its place. So you see that they're interchangeable. And that would be Tosafoes' raya. So Tosafoes answer and says that since the beginning of the Mishnah started with kesef, so too it wanted to continue and tell you what that kesef was. How much is it? And it wanted to discuss kesef and shaveh kesef. And that's why it also taught kesef. The end state of kasha now is just write pruta or kesef, and I would know shaveh pruta or kesef. Why do I have to teach the shaveh kesef, B'Klal? Just write the kesef. You told me that they're interchangeable. The answer is no, not really. If I would have known kesef, I would have thought kesef dafka, and I wouldn't have known shaveh kesef. And now Tosafoes has a kasha. Well, where do we know that shaveh kesef works in marriage? Why? Because we see by Eved Ivri, if a slave wants to free himself and to use shaveh kesef, well, we need a verse to teach us that. We need a pasuk to teach us that. And we don't have a pasuk in Kiddushin telling us that shaveh kesef equals to kesef. Over there, by Eved Ivri, it says v'yeshev. We're talking about in the case of Pirion Kesef, where a slave was sold for 6 years. He wants to get out in the 5th year. Now, he is actually allowed to give shaveh kesef. In other words, instead of paying his master back cash for that year, he could actually give him back who knows what, his shoes, his house, whatever he wants. He's allowed to shaveh kesef. But that's learned from a verse. It says v'yeshev. It says when he returns, there's an extra word in the pasuk telling us that an Eved Ivri can use shaveh kesef. It's masha from there, and this is the way Tosafoes learns, that if you don't have a pasuk, you can't learn that shaveh kesef is kesef. Therefore, if you know kesef, you don't know shaveh kesef. How does it work in Kiddushin? And Tosafoes brings another proof that you have to have a limud, you have to be learned from somewhere that shaveh kesef from Daf Chet. Over there, they asked the Rav Kahana, how can you use a shaveh pruta for a pigeon aben to redeem the firstborn child? The Gemara said over there, since he was an Adam Gavra, a big person, he was allowed to do it, not allowed to do it, he must have known how to source for it. In the end, they produced the source, and the source is a klal pra klal, which means in the Pesukim, you have a particular, and then a klal, a general, and then a particular. From there, they learn out that shtar and land will not work. A document and land will not work by a pigeon aben, but a shaveh pruta will work. So you see, you need a source to tell me that a shaveh pruta works. Where do we know that it works in Kiddushin? And not only that, Tosafoes says, where do we know that it works in Erchin? Let's say a person gives his value to the Beis HaMikdash. He vows a vow. He wants to give his value to the Beis HaMikdash. Where do we know that it works, a shaveh pruta in Erchin? Because we don't have a pasuk from there either. But we know that it works. And not only that, another kasha, in Hegdesh. Let's say a person wants to redeem a Hegdesh, a cow or a shiur that he gave to the Beis HaMikdash, and he wants to redeem it. Is he allowed to use shaveh kesef? He is allowed to use shaveh kesef, but the question will be, from what's the source? So we'll be able to answer Hegdesh by saying possibly it is a klal pra klal. Tosafoes explains, since we see by Hegdesh that Shtar doesn't work, a document does not work, and land doesn't work, must be it's a klal pra klal. And we can answer a Hekdesh. But at the end of the day, we still don't have any source for Kiddushin, for marriage, and for Erchin, when a person gives his value to the Beis HaMikdash. Where do we know you can use Shavei Kesef? You can use a car, you can use your house. So Tosafos finally answers that we can learn it from Eved Ivri. From a comparison, Eved Ivri will be a Binyan Av, a Mamatzinu. It will be the case where everybody learns from. And we can learn the other cases, we can learn Kiddushin and Erchin from there. The problem with that is that if you have two verses written telling you that Shavei Kesef Kesef, so it means it's limited to those places. So not is it also written by Eved Ivri, but it's also written by Nezikin. In the case of damages, a man is allowed to pay not only with cash, but he's also allowed to pay with his car. So since you have two Pesukim telling you, it means it's limited to those two places, which is a concept called Shtei Kesubim Bohem Echad. If that's true, Kiddushin and Erchin are out. It's true, Eved Ivri and Nezikin are in, but that's because they have Pesukim. But Kiddushin Erchin are out. Tosafos answers that you don't have the concept of Shtei Kesubim, two Pesukim that come as one, as a limitation, if both places are needed. And in this case, both places are needed. What do I mean that both places are needed? I cannot learn one from the other. I can't, if I had Nezikin, I wouldn't be able to learn Eved, and if I had Eved, I wouldn't be able to learn Nezikin. So Tosafos goes on to explain why you cannot learn one from the other. You cannot learn from Eved, you couldn't be able to learn Nezikin, because even if you knew that a slave could pay with Shavei Kesef, with something that's equal to money, you still would not be able to learn Nezikin. Why? Because Nezikin has a din that it has to pay Mamei Tev Aretz. It has to pay from the best of your land. If you want to pay in land, you have to pay from the best. So if that would be true, I wouldn't be able to learn that din from Eved, because Eved doesn't have that din. So if I would know that I could pay with land, or I could pay with Shavei Kesef by Eved, I wouldn't be able to learn the din in Nezikin, then it has to pay from the best. And the opposite also. How could I learn, if let's say I wanted to learn from Nezikin Eved, well then I would think I would have to pay from the best of my land if I paid in Shavei Kesef. Just like Nezikin, when you pay with Karka, you have to pay with the best of your Karka. So therefore I would not be able to learn from one from the other, because I wouldn't have the proper dinning. The second answer that Tosafos gives as to why you cannot learn from the other is like this. The reason why from Eved you could not learn Nezikin, because by Eved, slave, you need to save him. Nezikin, you don't need to save the guy. So maybe we want to make it easy for the Eved to be able to be saved, so we allow him to pay with Shavei Kesef, which is not true by Nezikin. On the other hand, from Nezikin, you couldn't learn Eved, because let's say you knew Nezikin who pays Shavei Kesef. Well, you'll say that's because we allow all kinds of things. But when it comes to an Eved, well, why did he become an Eved? Because he did the Avera of dealing with Shvius. He did business with Shvius, Paros of the 7 year, and the Chazal tells us that that's the person who becomes an Eved who does that. So therefore you would think, well, we're not going to give him a break because he's a Baal Avera. Tosafos concludes with Pidyon Ben and Hegdesh. I think really there's an unstated kash here. Wait a second, Pidyon Ben and Hegdesh also have limudim. Enochanami is klal pra klal. I don't really know if that applies to the din of Shtei Kesubim B'Echad, but still, either there's a problem with Shtei Kesubim B'Echad, and these are also taught, therefore the limitation will stand, or you'll say, no, why do you have limudim for them? Why can't you learn them also from Eved and Nezikin? The answer would be, well, I can't learn Pidyon Ben and Hegdesh from Eved or Nezikin, because I need to know about them, that documents and land will not work by them. It's not only Shavei Kesef works by them, it's true, but document and land does not work by them. Masha Enken, which is not true by Eved and Nezikin, where all three of those type of acquisitions work. We see at the end of the day, and it's the way everyone explains Tosafos, that Tosafos says you need a pasuk. You either learn from Eved or you learn from Nezikin, but you need a pasuk. There is no svara. Tosafos says it's not an outside idea. It's not a simple understanding that Shavei Kesef is Kesef, and the other Rishonim ask on Tosafos. The Ran, speaking in the Mishnah in Kiddushin Daf 2a, asked the similar kasha like Tosafos. He says it makes sense that Kesef works as an acquisition, because we have a source for it. It says clearly, it says that Kesef works at Kiddushin. But the question is, what about Shavei Kesef? What about something that's equal to money? Does that work? What if a man wants to acquire his wife with a car? He wants to give her a car and he'll be married to her. Does that work? Well, we have no source for that. So maybe you'll say, the Ran, not like Tosafos, that it's a svara. It makes sense. If two people agree to have, listen, I'll marry you if you give me that car. So fine, what's the problem? Shaveh kesef kekesef. It makes sense that Shaveh kesef is kekesef. It's a svara. It's an idea that makes sense. The problem with that is that the Ran disproves that it's a svara. Why? Because by Eved Ivri, who can use his Shaveh kesef, we have a limud for it. We have a pasuk. It says V'yeshev that he returns the money. He wants to get out in the 5th year, so he has to give the money for the 6th year. So that money can be paid in Shaveh kesef, but it's a limud. It's learned from a pasuk. If it's learned from a pasuk, then that proves that it's not a svara. Because if it was a svara, you don't need pesukim. The Torah does not need to teach us what we already know. Continues the Ran, he says, okay, well maybe we learn from Eved Ivri. The way the Tosefos said, we can make a binyan av out of Eved Ivri. We can learn from Eved Ivri that Shaveh kesef kesef. We can learn it to Kiddushin. So the Ran comes along and asks a similar kasha that Tosefos asks. He doesn't say the words of Shtei Kesuvim Echad, but it's a similar idea. Because we see that it's also written by Nezikin that Shaveh kesef kesef. So how can you say you learn from Eved Ivri if you also have another source by Nezikin that Shaveh kesef kesef? That proves that every place you need a verse. He didn't say Shtei Kesuvim Echad as a miut, but he says every place we need to learn you have to have a verse because it's not a svara. So the Ran is not going to answer this problem by saying, no, really it is a svara. Not like Tosafoes, who says it's a pasuk, but really it's a svara. And both the pesukim are needed. So once I can prove that both the pesukim are needed, automatically we can go back to the svara. Why are both pesukim needed? We need to learn in Eved that he can use Shaveh kesef. Why? Because the Girion kesef, when he wants to get out in the 6th year, where he can do that forcefully, he can demand it. So there, you couldn't learn from the Zikin. So you'll say, since it's forceful, well, he can get out, it's forceful, but at least he has to pay his master back cash, and you wouldn't be able to learn from the Zikin. And the reason Nezikin needs to be taught is because you would not be able to learn that from Eved, because Nezikin has to pay from the best. So since it has to pay from the best, even though Eved could use Shaveh kesef, well maybe you would think that Nezikin has to use the best, what? The best kesef, which means real kesef and not Shaveh kesef. It's interesting that the Ran does not bring the same reason as Tosefos brought as to why you cannot learn from the Zikin. The Ran seemed to be saying you couldn't learn from the Zikin because Kiddushin is forceful. So since it's forceful, you would have thought maybe you can't use Shaveh kesef. Whereas Tosefos said, the evidence got himself into hot water. He did Averas, and basically that's how he got himself into that. So you would have thought that even though the Nezikin you can pay with Shaveh kesef, but Eved cannot pay with Shaveh kesef. We'll see that it could be a nafkamina between these reasonings. Now at the end of the day, it comes out that Tosefos learns the source of Shaveh kesef is learned from Pesukim. Because he had Shtei Kesuvim Boim Ke'achad, you produced reasons for the Shtei Kesuvim, and then you went back to the pasuk and you can actually learn from them. Mashain came the Ran here. He also had a similar kasha Shtei Kesuvim Boim Echad, but once he told you why each one was needed, he held that you could actually go back to the svara. In other words, the svara basically is a Shaveh kesef kesef. But if they fall below the line, in other words, these two cases of Eved and Nezikin, both of them had reasons not to say the svara. So we used the pesukim to put them back into place. So, but you can still learn from the svara. Tosafos says, no, you never had a svara. You needed the pesukim to tell you that you don't have Shtei Kesuvim Boim Echad, which means at the end of the day you can learn from the pesukim. And that's the machlokas between them. The Marasha explains that we can't learn Kiddushin or Erchen from Pidyon Ben or Hegdesh, since they cannot be acquired with land or with a document. Really, like the end of Tosafos says. He goes on to explain that Tosefos, who says we learn from Kiddushin and Erchen, from Eved Ivri and Nezikin, was really only according to the first answer. That states that the reason why Eved Ivri and Nezikin cannot be learned one from the other was because of Meitab. You can't learn Nezikin from Eved Ivri because it doesn't have Meitab, and you can't learn Eved Ivri from Nezikin because you would have thought that it does have Meitab. It does have to pay from the best, and therefore would not have to pay, or it could not pay, with Shaveh kesef. That was the first answer of Tosefos. Therefore, you still could learn Kiddushin from Eved Ivri. Why? Because Kiddushin from it doesn't have the problem of Meitav. If I learn from Eved Ivri, because Eved Ivri doesn't have Meitav, and I can learn Kiddushin, I have no problem with Meitav. Everything works out, and I can learn Kiddushin from Meitav. But according to the second answer, where the distinction as to why you couldn't learn from an Eved Ivri from the Zikin was because by Eved Ivri, we said we go easy on him. Why? We got to go east on Eved Ivri because he was captured. So maybe you could say he can pay with Shavei Kesef. Therefore, you still couldn't learn Kiddushin. Why? Because you'll say that Eved Ivri is a special case, and Kiddushin will not be out. Therefore, it must be that when Tosafos gave that second answer, he was really saying that you learn Kiddushin from the Zikin and not from Eved Ivri. A little bit of a technical point, but it's interesting. Here comes the real difficulty, though. Why doesn't Tosafos say basically like the Ran? Why? Because Tosafos wants to say you learn from Pesuki, but he didn't have to go so far. Since Tosafos admits that we have problems here with Eved Ivri and Ezekiel, and we need Pesukim to fix up the problems, well, maybe you'll say that Shavei Kesef Kekesef is like from Svara. And each of these problems that we have, that's why we need the Pesukim. It's not that you need Pesukim and you have to learn from Pesukim, and the only place you can learn is from a Pasuk. No, these Pesukim are here because you would have thought the opposite of the Svara Chitzona. You would have thought that Shavei Kesef doesn't work. So, why don't we learn like the Ran? That's the way the Ran learned. The Ran learned there's problems with Eved Ivri and Kiddushin, and therefore you have the Pesukim, and that explains the Pesukim away. But you can go back to the original Svara. Tosafos, on the other hand, says, no, you actually have to learn from Pesukim. But why? Let him learn like the Ran. And that is the Kasha of the Marasha. Rav David Parvarsky asked the Kasha on Tosafos and says, what's Tosafos' force to say that we're learning from Pesukim, that we need to learn Kiddushin, we need to learn from a Pasuk, that Shavei Kesef Kekesef? Basically, like the Kasha of the Marasha, what's pushing Tosafos? He wants to say that what the Ran used as his chiluk, as to why we needed the pasuk by an Eved, because since an Eved can force his way away from the Baal, so we want to be able to learn the Svara of Shavei Kesef Kesef. We say it's a special case, that since he can force his way out, he has to pay. He says that's a gufa, he turns it around and says maybe that's a gufa Tosafos Raya. Maybe that's Tosafos' proof. Since you see there's a difference between Shavei Kesef and Kesef, in a case where you're forced, well, then that's a Raya that they're not the same. And he brings the Makneh, Rav David Parvarsky brings the Makneh, who says that there should be shum chiluk in such a case. There's no chiluk in such a case. Why would you think there'd be any difference just because you're forced? But so what? So he's forced, and therefore, since he can force the Baal, and he can get out in the 6th year, and he can pay him, he has to pay with real kesef? Let him pay with Shavei Kesef. What's the difference? He's in a position of power. Let him pay. That's a gufa right. If the really Shavei Kesef was equal, if they're really equal, well then Shavei Kesef should work also. This could also come down to the original understanding. What does it mean, Shavei Kesef Kekesef? If do you hold that it means it has to be 100% equal? When it's Shavei Kesef Kekesef, it means equal, exactly the same. So if they're exactly the same, so if you see any chiluk between them, that means you won't be able to learn. Therefore, you need Pesukim. The Svara is not going to stand. Marasha ain't Kain. If you said that Shavei Kesef is Kesef, I never meant they were equal. I meant that they function the same. Therefore, if I see in one case that doesn't function the same, it doesn't mean that I have to learn a pasuk. It just means that I fell out of the Svara. Another point is that it could be the difference between the Ran and the Tosafos is really based on the Svara itself. Since the Ran is saying that we learn from the Svara, and he says clearly that the Svara is because the two people are Maratse, the two people agree. If the original limit is based on the Svara, well, this case falls off of the Svara, because the Svara is the two people who agree with each other. And in case of forcing, it won't apply. Therefore, the Svara will fall off, and you need a pasuk to put it back. But that doesn't mean you need to learn from a pasuk, you learn from the Svara. It happens to be the Svara has limitations. In this case, the Svara will not apply. Marasha ain't Kain and Tosafos did not bring that case, the problem with Eved Ivri. He held the problem with Eved Ivri was a different problem. He said the problem with Eved Ivri, you can't learn it from the Zikin, is because, since he got himself at the hot water, it's really his fault. But he doesn't say anything about the Baal Korcha. The way Tosafos will view Baal Korcha, he'll just say that it's a chiluk. I just see it's a chiluk, so you always need a pasuk to put it back. Because if Shavei Kesef was really like Kesef, if it was 100% Kesef, so any chiluk shows you that the Svara is broken. Marasha ain't Kain, if you hold the Svara is that two people agree with each other, well, the case of Baal Korcha will fall off the scale. You need the pasuk to put it back, and you can still learn from a Svara.